Hi, this is Sophia, and this is preparation for Fortinet Administrator exam. IPSec IKE Phase 2 Fortinet. What are key components and configuration for Phase 1 IPSec? IKE is Internet Key Exchange protocol, is responsible for establishing a secure and authenticated communication channel between VPN peers before encrypting actual data. Key parameters in IKE Phase 1 are base network remote gateway. Common options are static IP, when one or both peers have fixed public IP. This configuration is recommended by Fortinet. Another option is dynamic IP. It is useful when one peer has a changing IP address. For example, remote users of branch offices will receive dynamically assigned IP addresses. Third option is dial-up, aggressive mode. Dial-up mode is used for road warriors, remote users, where VPN client, such as FortiNet client, third-party client, initiates the connection. Using graphical user interface, you can navigate to VPN IPSec wizard, set as remote gateway, assign a static IP address, enter the fixed public IP of the remote peer, or otherwise you can set up dynamic DNS or anything else when remote IP address is not fixed. You can set up for the remote gateway the configuration using command line interface. For that, you put config VPN IPSec phase 1 -interface, edit, then enter quoted the name of the VPN, such as branch, for example, North Sydney VPN, then set interface. There you set WAN1 interface, set remote gateway, and there you put the IP address of the remote gateway, remote FortiGate's public IP address. Then next and end. The second option, mode configuration, main mode and aggressive mode. Mode configuration determines how peers authenticate and establish the VPN tunnel. Main mode, use case for main mode is site-to-site, and use case for aggressive mode could be like dynamic IP VPNs such as road warriors, end users. Pros for main mode is that it is more secure because it negotiates in 6 messages. Aggressive mode negotiates in 3 messages. So pros for aggressive mode is that it is faster, and cons for main mode is that main mode is slower than aggressive mode, but aggressive mode is less secure because it might expose some identity information. You can configure mode, such as main mode, aggressive mode, using command line interface. For that, you set exchange mode main and set exchange mode aggressive. It depends what you want to set up. Phase 1 configuration is broken down on graphical user interface into 4 sections: network, authentication, phase 1 proposal, and XAuth for IKE version 1. The section which is network authentication. For network, this section includes settings related to the connectivity of the IPSec tunnel. There are parameters such as, for the IPSec tunnel, IP version. You can select IP version to use for the IPSec tunnel. The packets being encapsulated could be a version of IP version 4 or IP version 6, and their IP version is defined in the phase 2 selectors. Next, settings related to connectivity of the IPSec tunnel is remote gateway. Remote gateway defines the type of the remote gateway. There are 3 types: static IP address, dial-up user, and dynamic DNS. IP address. IP address is the address of the remote gateway. This field appears only when you select static IP address as a remote gateway. Then you select interface. That interface, for example, you can choose, for example, let's say port 1. What is port 1? It is the interface while IPSec tunnel terminates on the local FortiGate. Usually this is the interface which is connected to the internet or to the WAN, wide area network. We need to make sure that it is an active route to the remote gateway through this interface, otherwise the tunnel will not come up. Next setting for network phase is a local gateway. You can toggle it on or off. Local gateway gives you 3 options: primary IP, secondary IP, or specify. Local gateway enables when interface where the tunnel terminates has multiple addresses assigned and you want to specify which address to use for the tunnel. So you can choose between primary IP, secondary IP, or specify. You can select specify if you want to use the IP address different from the primary or secondary IP addresses. Mode config. Mode config enables automatic confirmation through IKE, Internet Key Exchange. FortiGate acts as an IKE mode config client when you enable mode config. When you set up remote gateway to either static IP address or dynamic DNS. If you set remote gateway to dial-up user, FortiGate acts as an IKE mode config server, and you need to put more configuration options. There will be more configuration options on graphical user interface in that case. Next, in phase 2, you need to choose options available on graphical user interface in the network section. NAT traversal. The option NAT traversal controls the behavior for NAT traversal. Keep alive frequency. When you enable NAT traversal, FortiGate sends keep alive probes at the configured frequency. DPD, dead peer detection. You can use dead peer detection to detect dead tunnels. There are 3 DPD modes. On demand is the default mode. FEC, forward error correction. It is a technique that you can use to reduce the number of retransmissions on IPSec tunnels established only over noisy links, and it is at the expense of using more bandwidth. We can enable FEC, forward error connection, on egress and on ingress interfaces, and it is only supported when you disable IPSec hardware offloading. And there is advanced modes. It's just like at the end of all these network settings, there is a small plus. You hit advanced, and then you can put advanced details such as add route, auto discovery sender, auto discovery receiver, exchange interface IP, device creation, and aggregate member. Add route disables this set. If you disable add route setting, you can do it when you're using dynamic routing protocol over IPSec, and when you don't want FortiGate to automatically adding static routes. Auto Discovery Center, you enable this setting on a hub if you want the hub to facilitate AD-VPN shortcut negotiation for spokes. When Auto Discovery Center enabled, the hub sends shortcut offer to the spoke to indicate that it can establish a shortcut to the remote spoke. Auto Discovery Receiver, you enable this setting on a spoke if you want to, the spoke to negotiate a DVPN shortcut. Exchanging interface IP. You enable this setting to allow exchange of IPSec interface IP addresses. This allows point-to-multipoint connection between the hub and spokes. Device creation. Enable this setting. You can, for all these settings, there are 2 options. They could be either enabled or disabled. So you enable device creation setting to instruct FortiGate to create an interface for every dial-up client. To increase performance, you can disable this setting in dial-up servers with many dial-up clients. Aggregate member. FortiGate allows you to aggregate multiple IPSec tunnels into single interface, like link and aggregation, like for example, Ether channels. So you enable this option if you want the tunnel to become an aggregate member. So let's continue about mode config. It's IP assignment for remote clients. Mode config is used in remote access VPNs, such as dial-up VPNs, where FortiGate assigns IP addresses to VPN clients, for example, to remote users. Mode config helps in split tunneling or with defining a custom IP range for VPN users. You can set up mode config both using graphical user interface or with command line interface. With graphical user interface, you go to VPN, IPSec wizard, remote access VPN, and enable mode config, and then set up IP range. In command line interface, you use 4 commands. First, set up mode CFG enable. Set, let's say we are using it for IP versions 4. Set IPv4 -start -up, then IP address. Then set IPv4 end up, and then set the end IP address of the range that you're defining to assign to those remote devices. Then set DNS-mode auto. You can also set a specific internal DNS server using, for example, by DNS name. NAT traversal is required when VPN peers are behind NAT. VPN peers behind NAT become behind network address translation. NAT traversal uses UDP port 4500 instead of ESP protocol IP50 to allow VPN traffic through network address translation devices. NAT traversal automatically detects NAT and applies encapsulation to bypass it. In command line interface, you can enable NAT traversal using a simple command set NAT-traversal enable. If VPN falls when one peer is behind the firewall, check if UDP 500 and 4500 are open. And on third-party firewalls, you enable IPSec pass-through if needed. What about DPD, dead peer detection? Dead peer detection monitors the VPN tunnels and automatically detects when the remote peer is unreachable. Dead peer detection helps in failover scenarios when virtual private network session is dropped due to idle timeout. And DPD sends keep alive packets to confirm if the tunnel is still active. You can enable a DPD both on graphical user interface and using command line interface. Using CLI, you set up command set DPD enable, set DPD retry interval, let's say 10, so it will be checking every 10 seconds. Set DPD-timeout 30. 30 indicates that it declares peer dead if no response is coming in 30 seconds. And the best practice is to enable DPD for remote access VPNs to detect idle clients. And if you need to trigger failover quickly, you can use shorter intervals for high availability setups. What about troubleshooting IKE phase 1? There could be multiple issues, such as, for example, why VPN is not establishing. First, you're checking logs and setting diagnose debug application IKE-1. You ensure that correct phase 1 encryption settings, because mismatch in encryption settings might cause failure. You verify correct pre-shared key on both sides. Also, it might be that NAT traversal is not working, and you need to ensure that port UDP 4500 is allowed in firewalls. And check if internet service provider or router is blocking ESP protocol 50. Maybe there are like frequent VPN drops, like flipping, VPN is flipping. You can increase DPD timeout or use keep alive settings. In conclusion, base network and remote gateway defines how sites connect. Internet key exchange mode, main or aggressive, it determines the authentication process. Mode config is used for addressing dynamic IPs to remote users. NAT traversal is crucial when VPN is behind a NAT device. DPD keeps the VPN active and detects dead connections. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.